It's hard to contain your excitement when you get something you've really wanted. Like the gold standard in automotive protection, WeatherTech floor liners. With deep sculpted channels and laser measured for total protection in the front, back, and even up the sides.
Dad, you're going viral.
What? WeatherTech me.
So don't be shy, enjoy. Order your premium American-made products at WeatherTech.com.
Welcome once again to Virginia International Raceway. We're here for the Porsche Sprint Challenge North America by Yokohama GT3 Cup Series, getting ready to start their qualifying, just letting off the green flag now as they exit pit lane. I'm Joe Peak with Ryan Marine once again, and drivers going to be trying to warm up their tires, although we are getting close to the middle of the afternoon now. Well, at least close to noon, I should say. So we should be seeing much warmer temperatures than what we saw for the Caymans a little bit earlier this morning. There are going to be 3 classes that are qualifying in this one, Ryan. Slightly different, and this time they actually have a car that is different from one of the other classes, so traffic could be a consideration.
Certainly so. Different from the Caymans that we saw earlier where they were the 2 classes, but the cars were the same. Here we've got 2 different classes of the 992 Cup car plus the older generation 991 mixed in for good measure, and we've seen that the pace of those 991s, it can be strong enough to be in the top 5 in the overall order. So definitely you will see some traffic, some mixing of those classes here in this qualifying session at beautiful VIR. 17 turns, 3.27 miles. Lots of elevation change around this place. High speed, high commitment, high consequence as well, Joe, if something goes awry.
Yep, we've seen that in practice. Thankfully, last qualifying went pretty well. As we didn't have any major offs, a couple spins, but nobody in the wall. Now, these cars are a little bit quicker than the Caymans, so it's a higher chance of they'll manage to get into the wall.
Sounds like there's a car off. I heard the number 275, and so that has brought a red flag out already, even before anyone has been able to turn an official lap time. So on the out lap, someone has had problems. And look, we talked about it. This is a place you've got to be inch perfect or things can go wrong very fast.
I'm getting information that might be broken steering or suspension on the car. And I see a tow truck on our shot here actually heading off the Patriot course towards the roller coaster. And they weren't up there yet, so I'm not sure where exactly that truck is off to go. I would have thought it would have been on the first part of the lap. So we'll see if we can find out where exactly this is taking place. And hopefully they'll be ready in time for their race a little bit later on this afternoon.
275 would be Shane Leathers, by the way, who believe would be the car that's in strife here. Forward Motorsports is the team. Shane comes in that Pro-Am class for 992, 6th in points with the best finish of the season, 7th a couple of times. Sebring race 1, Barber race number 2.
Now, the unfortunate thing in this is even though they didn't really get to start any official laps, the clock continues to tick. So hopefully this will be a quick cleanup. And now they will have to really hustle to get some good laps in. As we saw with the Caymans earlier, laps are just under 2 minutes for most GT cars around VIR. So you don't get a whole lot of them in with a total of 25 minutes for these qualifying sessions.
That's true, and you also don't get many at the peak of the tire. That's something else to keep in mind. We saw most of the fast times in Cayman qualifying coming very, very early in that session. So you need to maximize that opportunity. There's no Real opportunity now, though, I think, to wait around for a gap because the clock continues to run due to this red flag. That leaves you with precious little time to work with, and so where maybe you would have seen some patience trying to find clear track with which to work, not sure that's necessarily going to be the easiest to do or something anyone's going to be inclined to do given the limited amount of time available still in this qualifying session.
And likely we'll be seeing about 24 cars out there all trying to set those times in such a small window that they'll have now. There we've got some pictures. So this is just between NASCAR Bend and the left hook. So this is turns 3 and 4, where the car has gone off to the left-hand side, which is interesting. Typically, we see cars winding up on the right-hand side there.
Makes you wonder if, like you said earlier, there might have been something amiss mechanically and Shane just pulled that car safely off the racing surface and in a place where the tow truck could get to him and clean this up pretty quickly. Hard to tell for sure from this angle exactly what might have happened, but at least the back of the car can't see any visible damage.
Yeah. I was going to say at least it'll be quicker than yesterday during practice. We had a car actually in one of the most unusual incidents we've seen. Frank Vitiello had backed it in I think it was at NASCAR Bend, into the tire barrier and somehow had managed to wind up diagonally. Two tires were on the ground and 2 tires were on the tire barrier. And it took them a fair bit of time to figure out how to pluck that car off there without hurting it any more than it already had been damaged. What we heard from race control, by the way, was there was an incident between 275 and the 222. That's Ashley Freiberg. Hopefully there wasn't contact there.
Yeah, good. That's very interesting to hear. And Ashley's certainly been a story this weekend. She comes in third in points, had the best weekend of her season so far at Circuit of the Americas. And unfortunately left that weekend at COTA with question marks hanging about her future. Her ride with MDK Motorsports went away, but she was able to scramble and put something together thanks to the folks at Kelly Moss. She's here again this weekend and has a chance to continue to fight for that championship.
Yeah, you had a nice interview with her that hopefully we'll get to see later on in this weekend during our shows, as that was thankfully a very quick cleanup. You can see they're already revving the engines, getting ready to take off as our crew members down on pit lane just waiting for the signal from race control to release them. And then everybody will be rushing out to try and set a fast time. Paul Bocuse, that first one that you see out there. They actually do line them up in a specific order for these, and I assume that they didn't really have many changes on that one. It is according to their quickest time in practice 2 is where they line them up. So Paul was the quickest in that practice session. He gets the clear track to try and set a fast time first.
Paul, the champion in the Cayman ranks 1 year ago, making a step up to the 911 Cup Cars, 992 version for Paul here this year. And as he was last year, he's been a fixture on the podium. Just looking for that breakthrough win. Maybe this is the weekend.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was noticing looking at his stats. It's a bit of deja vu all over again for him, unfortunately, because his championship is very similar. And I think you said he took 1 win, but everything else was practically always on the podium for him, just racked up all those points and ran away with it. So I'm sure he's hoping to turn that around because consistency is great, but what race car driver doesn't want to win?
It's true. I mean, it's hard to feel too bad for Paul because he did win the championship after all, and with that made this step up here to the 992 Pro-Am class for this year, but it does seem awfully familiar to last year. The biggest difference is there were a whole bunch of different drivers winning in the Caymans last year. This year, it's all been about Jared Thomas. He's been nearly perfect here in 2024, and so with that in mind, Paul's recipe for championship success last year, it was good enough just to be on the podium week in and week out and then get that 1 win at Indianapolis at the end of the season. This year, because of Jared's strength week in and week out, Paul finds himself 49 points back with 6 races down and 8 races to go here this season. So he needs to start winning some races if he's going to claw back into that deficit.
Both Paul, Jared, and Ashley as well are in the hunt for this one. in the championship. And we're really glad to see that Ashley was able to procure a ride to try and stay in the hunt for that as we ride on board with her, as we'll see whether or not she can place well, at least in the qualifying. Won't really determine the weekend, but you want good track position around here. Racing, of course, with new sponsorship with her new team as well, with Thu Brûlé out on the car. I believe a friend of hers, they have come forward with this new company that does skincare and lotion. And with her being outside, she said that that's actually something that ties in really well with her. So it's always, I suppose it's always a plus when your sponsor is something you genuinely care about.
Yeah, good synergy there. David Brûlé is the Brûlé in question. It's actually David's wife who started this skincare company. They're just getting that off the ground. David is a racer that folks who followed IMSA racing and single-make Porsche racing over the years, you might be aware of. He ran in the Rolex 24 earlier this year. He's run in IMSA both in GT3 and GT4 machinery. A lot of Porsches in his resume as well. He's a former class winner. No, that's not right. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong note there. But David's certainly someone who's been around for a long time, has stepped back from some of the racing that he was intending to do, but still finds a way to stay involved with promising drivers that just need a little bit of help getting over the finish line from a financial standpoint. And Alec Udell, who's someone who's come through the Porsche single-make ranks racing in SRO, actually got the first ever GT3 win for the brand new Corvette the last time out in SRO competition at Circuit of the Americas back in May. That's someone David has been helping here in recent years. And Ashley Freiberg, the latest beneficiary of his generosity, and great to see that coming together for Ashley, who's the reigning 991 champion of a year ago, looking to back that up with another strong result this year in 992 machinery.
Yeah, that's been kind of the talking point we've discussed a lot is on screen. That was Paul just kicking up the dirt out of Hogpen. Thankfully, it wasn't any worse than just getting some of that red clay on the tires. So we'll see how quick this lap actually is. I'm sure that maybe cost him a tenth or two.
First lap at a 151.125, but immediately Jared Thomas goes to the top at a 148.339. Jared not wasting any time getting up to speed. He's coming off of a weekend that saw him finish in the top 10 in IMSA GT4 competition just last weekend at Mid-Ohio, driving in a Cayman. In fact, it's that same Cayman chassis that his teammate Nick Schaefer is driving here this weekend. One of the fun stories we've discovered walking around the paddock.
Yeah, those two teammates, though, in the different series that we have here within Porsche Sprint Challenge North America, but still working hard together and clearly seeing some good results. So there is a lot of talent over in that team.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jared also had a big weekend at MX5 Cup competition at Mid-Ohio. He's a busy guy racing a lot of different race cars, but certainly a welcome addition to the Porsche Sprint Challenge paddock. We saw him test the waters at Indy last year, and clearly this is a team that has its eyes on being involved in the Porsche pyramid for a long time to come.
You know, I mentioned whether or not that off for Paul would affect his lap time. 2.7 seconds off of Jared Thomas. So I'd say, yeah, that did some harm. And you mentioned you kind of want to get the best of the tires out here. So now he's going to have probably a bit of a rough time trying to play catch-up. It's Ashley Freiberg who is in second overall. But that's in our Pro-Am class. That's going to be the cars with the white number plates that you see on the sides of them. The blue ones will be your Masters. Joel Johnson is on that pole, but also third overall. He's doing excellent. And as we've come to often see, the red number plates sees Niels Meissner on the provisional pole for the 991s.
Niels has been awesome this year as Paul just jumped to second overall. He's only a 4/10 or so off of Jared Thomas now, so a great recovery from Paul Bocuse. But talking about Niels Meissner, he has been a powerhouse in that 991 class.
275 has been reviewed. Car 222, loss of all qualifying times in this session for incident responsibility. Car 222,
wow.
Loss of all time.
So Freiberg will not be allowed to take a qualifying time, even though she has set them. I wonder if they'll come park the car and just try and preserve the equipment from here, because surely she'll get some information on that shortly as we ride on board with her. And this is going to be extra gutting because, like I said, she's on the front row right now as it currently stands. If she has to travel from all the way in the back of the field, that is going to be a lot of cars to pass.
Well, think about this, too. It's not just passing cars, but it's a lot of out-of-class cars that she'll need to get to the front of the Pro-Am class. So, yikes, that's going to make for a tough day today. And then you think about how the grid is set for race number 2. It could be your second fastest lap from qualifying. We know that's not going to be the case for Ashley, but it also could be your fastest race lap. And if she's stuck in traffic all day, as she might very well be coming through this field, that could be very difficult for her to get a representative grid position for race 2 tomorrow, too.
Yeah, oh, man. So it is definitely a sport with highs and lows. Like we said, she had her breakthrough win at the first race of COTA, then didn't even get to take part in the second race as the car broke down on the pace lap. And now this, once she returns, looking so fast and having qualifying times taken away. But the rules are the rules. And incident responsibility, that is, and I think she just came in there on our screen. So it looks like they are going to park the car and focus, I imagine, on the race.
Jared Thomas just reset the benchmark time at a 1:48.126. He's now 0.6 of a second clear of Paul Bocuse, and really there's no one else in the zip code. Everyone else well over a second back when you take Ashley Freiberg out of the equation. We know that her time won't stick. That then would put Joel Johnson on the inside of the second row provisionally and on the pole position in the Masters class. What a run of form it's been for Joel. He's won 3 straight races, finds himself third in points because Sebring was a disaster with finishes of 19th and 15th, but he's bounced back in a big way with no finish worse than 5th since, including those 3 wins.
Yeah, it's no wonder that he is where he is in the points right now. So the 227.
Turn one. We've got car 218 off-course drivers left at turn 1. This car's preparing to continue.
That's Tim Kesman, and sounds like he'll be able to get that one going.
218 is continuing slowly.
Machine.
Turn 1 is clear.
There we see him returning to the track at the horseshoe. Easy to do into there, just heavy braking into that corner. And on top of it, that's a double apexer.
Tough place for sure. Easy to have things go wrong there. For Tim Kesman, that clearly was the case. He's a former SCCA Runoffs national champion. Won that championship back in 2021 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I was trying to see if maybe it happened here at VIR, because VIR has hosted the runoffs a lot in recent years, but that was not the case. He was third, though, at the runoffs here at VIR back in 2019, so he does have some experience around this place. Made his season debut at Circuit of the Americas the last time out with finishes of 7th and 6th.
Tim currently sitting 8th overall, but he is 3rd in the Masters class right now. Just ahead of him is Conrad Geiss, and he's been an interesting story this weekend. I mentioned there was a car that had a big accident in our last show for the Cayman qualifying. That was Conrad's car. Into the roller coaster, destroyed it, unfortunately, his regular car, and has had to switch to a backup, and apparently is been able to get it up to speed quite quickly, because he's currently sitting 4th. No, it looks like he's been bumped down to 5th in class, but he's sitting in 9th, and Conrad is able to carry on, just considering it as a minor setback.
And becomes a de facto 4th in class, because Ashley Freiberg's times, as we've noted, will be erased. And those two are actually connected here this weekend in a couple of ways, because in addition to what we're just talking about there with the penalty, the backup chassis was the chassis Ashley had raced at Circuit of the Americas. If she had not switched teams, there might not have been a car for Conrad here this weekend.
So he kind of got a little lucky in that sense, and has made it very interesting because he's had a consistent livery. This is his first time switching, but the thing that has amused me about Ashley is this is the 3rd different paint she's had on the car since she started this season, and we're in round 4. So it's definitely been a whirlwind for her in a few ways. Now, looks like We saw somebody come in, and I just missed who that was. A couple of cars have pitted. Jared Thomas, I know, stopped in, and I don't think he's been out since, but no one's been close to him. Paul's still trying to chase down those 6/10ths, but they've got about 6 minutes left, so I imagine we're going to start seeing more and more drivers say that's enough and head in as we watch On Board with John Gilliland.
How about Tony Melito? Currently 9th and on provisional pole in 991. That's awesome. Really good showing from Melito, who is right there in the thick of things with the newer 992 cars all around him.
Yeah, so Tony, I'm trying to think if we've seen him really competing well with Niels, because usually Meissner just runs away from everybody. If anything, it's been a different driver that usually runs away.
5 points back in second coming into the weekend for Fall Line Motorsports. But to your point, he's not had a pole yet this season. And I suspect Niels Meissner is just about, he's got 3 of the 6 potential poles this year, does Niels. So it is a bit strange to see somebody else topping the charts, but Tony certainly deserves it.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it was Charlie Peter that usually was racing with Niels, who is at Barber and Coda, but is not here this weekend, unfortunately. Just saw the senior Musial, Dave Musial 1.0, go by us and back onto the track. I know he was looking pretty good for a while, and in fact, actually, no, I was looking at David Musial 2.0, who is 5th overall and 3rd in class right now up there.
14th for the elder Dave. He's that's overall, not sure about class position, but you're right. I mean, Dave 2.0 sits 5th overall, 3rd in class now that the Freiburg penalty has been reflected on timing and scoring. That's a really good qualifying result for him here at VIR.
I think he'll be very happy with that. We've seen him hanging around the mid-pack, but I don't think we've seen him, like you said, that high up the order. Unfortunately for him, he'll be competing with Johnson and Bowden in the Masters to try and get up to Bocuse before he can make an overtake within class if they sit as is. Mark Bowden, I think, recently moving up into that P4 overall in the 246 machine, has at times showed flashes of speed this weekend and seems to be showing up at the right time for this session. Yeah,
he's the Masters points leader, despite the fact he's not won a race this season, but he does have 4 podium finishes. In fact, all 4 of them have been third-place finishes, but that consistency has been the name of the game, and it gives him a narrow 9-point advantage here as we approach the halfway mark of the season.
Bowden just came in and parked it in front of us as well, so he's probably done with his qualifying now as he just shut the engine off. Scott Blend is 3rd in that Masters, sitting in 6th. Scott has been getting himself a victory or 2 this season, and I'm sure he'd like to get another one here at VIR. He's one of those that's been fighting for that championship in the 992 Masters and currently sitting within the top 3. Conrad Geis jumped up to 7th overall recently and into 4th in the 992 Pro-Am as we watch Vitiello. Glad to see this car out. As I mentioned earlier, Frank was the one that had it perched precariously on the barrier earlier this weekend.
Yeah, great work by the track crew to recover that car. It happened at the end of the session, so they could take their time, and it's not like anybody was losing track time because of it. Doing exactly what they needed to do to make sure that the car didn't sustain any additional damage. But great work by that crew to get the car recovered from on top of the tire bales and in a position where he can qualify here today. Quickly, though, back to Bowden. This is a track where he has won an SCCA national championship. He won the runoffs here in 2019. So he's got some track knowledge, and not surprising to see him having good success here at this place.
And those SCCA races, I mean, the Nationals draw people literally from all over the country.
Right.
So,
and Canada, too, lest we forget.
That's true, yeah. So, I mean, to win one of those, gosh, you are up against just everybody coming out of the woodwork. So that shows some real talent if you can come out on top on that one. But Frank, right now, up through the S's. Let's watch here with the onboard and see how he handles the curbs. Definitely looks a little unstable at times, but it settles in, and then he hits South Bend.
Love this part of the track. Great flow, great rhythm to it. Now into Oak Tree. If you know your racing lore, you'll know
1 minute.
there used to be a giant oak tree at the apex of that corner. That's why the corner has its name. Unfortunately, the tree is no more, but Son of Oak Tree is growing just outside the corner, just on the other side of the catch fencing, and that was grown from an acorn that came from the original tree, so the legacy continues.
Feels like that's the name of some sort of action or horror film.
Son of Oak Tree.
Oak Tree, yeah. Maybe the track can get on top of that at some point, pitch a script. Gilliland coming around. I think this is likely going to be his last lap unless he can get to the line within about 20 seconds here. It'll be close. See a couple cars flashing by us here, ready to start one last run.
And there is some pace still on the track. Tim Kesman just put up his
Stand
best
by,
lap
starter.
of the session a moment ago. Did not improve position-wise, but did improve the time. Sits 9th in the overall order and 4th in
Checkered flag,
class.
starter, checkered flag.
So there we go. I think Gilliland will indeed be the first. No, it's the 210 actually. Jody Miller,
Car
who goes by,
210, first to receive
takes
checkered.
the
Car
checkered
210.
flag, and he is actually going to wind up. I've lost track of him, where he put his time in. I think Gilliland just finished up his qualifying, though, but Miller's MGM is 12th overall. That's going to be somewhere in the realm of about 6th in the Masters class.
Shaping up to be an interesting one. I think it's a good thing we've got an onboard camera in Ashley Freiberg's car. I suspect that's going to be must-see TV at the start of the race as she makes her way through the field.
That's 127, 152, and 161.
So just more calls for drivers that needing to be looked over at tech there post-session. I see the 218, the 248, and the 152 are all still finishing their lap. We don't know if they'll actually take the lap, but they have not been given the checkered flag yet. Need to actually check to see which cars that is. 152 is one of our 991s, and that is Meissner, actually, so that could be important for him. The 218 is Kesman, and I think they are slowing down on the way into pit lane indeed, so they're going to end that. Vitiello in the 248 is done with his qualifying. What about Meissner now?
4 cars in 992 Masters, the 227, 246,
So
245, and 218.
as we wrap up the qualifying, watching to see whether or not Meissner is going to complete this lap or not.
992 Pro-Am, cars 296, 271.
To go racing for both of our series this weekend. Why don't we head down our top finishers here in this queue. This is provisional results for this one. Jared Thomas has it on the pole position, and it is by more than half a second over Paul Bocuse. But, of course, we know Paul's first lap was compromised pretty significantly there with an off, so he could be quicker than that time implies. Joel Johnson will start 3rd overall, but as our Masters pole sitter, Mark Bowden was 4th, also in the Masters. And then David Musial, P5. Scott Blend will start from 6th. Conrad Geis, good enough for 7th today. Then we get to our first 991. Tony Melito, impressive stuff, 8th overall on the pole in that class provisionally. Tim Kesman starts from 9th, and John Gilliland 10th. Then we have the remainder of our field here today. We'll be back a little bit later on for our first race of the weekend. It is going to be our Porsche Cayman Cup, coming back for the first race at 1:40 p.m. local time. It's Eastern time over here. 35 minutes plus 1 lap here at Virginia International Raceway. On behalf of myself, Joe Peak, and Ryan Marine, thank you for tuning in and hope to see you later on.